Okay, we should be live on YouTube and we are live on UGTV.
Okay, Rocky Mays, are we ready to go then with our committee?
Looks like your committee is here. Let me find the clerk. Give me just a second.
Sure.
Carol, are you on?
Sarah Schaefer is here.
Carol, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Looks like we're ready to go.
Okay, excellent. Thank you all so much. This is Commissioner Melissa Bynum, and we are starting Public Works and Safety Standing Committee for September 14. And before I call the meeting to order, I do want to announce that due to COVID-19, our committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom. Some are on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking so that we can avoid background noise. And during the meeting, committee members, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so that the public observing knows who's speaking. And this is critical given the number of remote participants. It's also current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended. Unless otherwise required by law, the public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments are included in the recording of tonight's meeting. I'll call our meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Roll call, Groneman. Mr. Groneman, are you on? Philbrook,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Bynum.
Here. And I do see Tom Groneman is on the call. You might call him again.
I'm here.
And Tom's here. Thank you. We have one revision to our agenda tonight, and that additional information's been provided for item 1, the Water 1 agreement for the levees project. And now we have minutes from July 27. Can I have a motion for approval?
Markley, move to approve.
Ramirez, second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call on the minutes, please.
Roll call, Groneman,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And the minutes are approved. Thank you all. There's 2 items on the committee agenda tonight. Item 1 is an agreement with Water 1 related to our Casey Levees project. And I believe we have Jeff Fisher and Sarah White to make the presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry, it jumped out and jumped back in. So thank you and good evening. This is Jeff Fisher, Director of Public Works. As you know, we are in the early stages of this levees project. It's probably one of the largest single projects in UG's history. Sarah White is our project lead. She's going to highlight the proposed agreement with Water 1 for you quickly. Scott Mensing from the Corps of Engineers is also with us in case he's needed. I will hand it over to Sarah White now.
Good evening. I am sharing my screen. Just want to make sure that everyone can see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Sarah White, and I'm an engineer in the Public Works Department. And I'm the project manager on the Kansas City Levees project. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about the Water One cooperative agreement and ask for, our recommendation to move forward with this agreement. So this is just an overall summary of the Kansas City Levees project. Some of you guys are familiar with the project, but this is a partnership with the Corps of Engineers, Kaw Valley Drainage District, the City of Kansas City, Missouri, and the Unified Government on a levee enhancement for 17 miles of levee units in the UG's district. These include Argentine levee unit, Armourdale levee unit, and the Central Industrial District. These enhancements include raising the levee, building new levee walls, pump station upgrades, relief well installation, and other various enhancements along the levee for enhanced flood protection. This project is a fully federally funded project, and it's budgeted at $453 million. This has been such a great opportunity for the UG that we are going to be able to enhance our levees and not have it be paid for with UG budget. So this is a great opportunity. So part of this is the amount of fill that is needed for this project is approximately 1 million cubic yards of fill. So a lot of dirt is needed to raise the levees. And Water One, which is the drinking water organization in Johnson County, had approached the Unified Government about they have fill or clean dirt that they needed to have removed in order to build 2 additional monofills on their location that's in Kansas City, Kansas. So they approached the project to say that they had this fill. So this agreement, this cooperative agreement, is between the Unified Government and Water One. It is a temporary borrow easement, and this agreement, lays out those rules and regulations for this. This is part of the project, so the Corps of Engineers will be the contracting officer. The contractor will remove this fill in order to place it on the levee units. And then they will grade out these monofills that are needed for their operation. So our recommendation is that we sign this agreement and have this great opportunity for the residents of KCK. And I guess now I'll just ask if there's any questions on this.
I have a question. You said how was it funded?
This project is a fully federally funded project. This
Which means it'll be prevailing wage.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Commissioner Philbrook. Just a quick clarification. As I was reading over the contract, even though the contractor is going to be someone that the federal government picks, bottom line is we're responsible for getting back the way it's supposed to be. Did I read that wrong?
You kind of broke up a little bit.
I said, even though the Corps of Engineers are the ones that are going to be dictating what their contractor does, it looked to me when I was reading, line is we're responsible for making sure everything gets back the way we said it would.
To Water One.
Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
So the reason the contract is between the unified government and Water One, and it doesn't include the Corps of Engineers or the other partners, is because of our LERD requirements for this project, which is land acquisitions, easements, relocations, disposals. This is part of that real estate acquisition by getting this easement and the borrow site. So that is all under the unified government's responsibility as a partner on this project.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
oh, sorry. So then we have an agreement. We have a public partnership agreement with the Corps of Engineers, and that includes us, Caw Valley Drainage District, KCMO, and the Corps, to say that, you know, that we will work together on this project. So I believe that between those two contracts, the UG is protected for what needs to happen on Water One site.
Okay, I will take you. You know, because of course we don't read over all of that stuff.
Right.
So,
So we've had,
so that's why I'm asking the question.
yes. So we have met with the Water One for the past year and a half. There has been a lot of discussions on how they want their site left, how to build this. And so that is all, there's a lot of design considerations that have all been put into the plan. So that there is a very detailed design criteria for this that's maybe not shown in this contract, but there's been a lot of work that's been and discussions that has taken place.
Okay.
Commissioner, this is Misty Brown, Deputy Chief Counsel. I will just.
Yeah, Misty.
Hi, Commissioner. I just do want to offer some assurances that the agreement we have with the Corps requires that the unified government be named as an additional insured with their contractor, and other provisions have been put in place to ensure that we're not left holding a bag if something goes awry.
Thank you for saying what I was going to say. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the committee? It's an amazing project. I appreciate the updates that you continue to bring us, and I know this item, you know, needs our action, but nonetheless, this is just an amazing project, and I'll look forward to you bringing us updates as we move through here. Are there any, did we hear anything from the public, Madam Clerk?
The clerk's office received no public comments.
All right. So if I could have a motion on the contract.
Commissioner Mike Kane, move for approval.
Second, Philbrook.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I'll have roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second item is an EPA-sponsored funding program. It's known as Water Infrastructure and Innovation Act of 2014. And we have, I think, Jeff Fisher again, along with Sarah Schaefer, I believe, to present this item for us. Mr. Fisher, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is an opportunity that staff's been exploring since late last year. In the engagement around stormwater last year, we indicated we would continue to pursue these kinds of opportunities, and we have. Sarah Schaefer has been working very diligently on this. Sarah is our lead on this initiative, and it's doing a great job of assembling a lot of resources and information to make application. I will let her highlight this, and then we'll round it out and ask questions, answer questions.
So thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. Sarah Schaefer, Public Works CMIP Program Manager. I have been excited to share this potential opportunity with you all this evening. So the UG has identified needs surrounding infrastructure, redevelopment for economic returns and revitalization of communities. Programs such as SOAR, Safe Routes to School, and our continued efforts surrounding combined sewers have begun to address such needs. However, without a program that provides substantial momentum in key economic areas addressing deficient infrastructure, the return on investment may be greatly marginalized without achieving its maximum potential. So in reviewing opportunities available to the UG, taking into account infrastructure, economic needs, and funding, an EPA program presented itself by way of stormwater infrastructure. This EPA program is the Water Infrastructure and Innovations Act of 2014, known as WIFIA. So what is WIFIA? So WIFIA is an opportunity providing funding momentum where the EPA provides 49 cents for every 51 cents spent to qualified borrowers at a very low rate that is paid over a longer period of time. There are multiple benefits to many areas for this programmatic type of funding. Some of these are indicated as below. 51% matching is indicated, $20 million minimum project size, single fixed secure rate at closing, which is very low, it's per the Treasury rate, up to 35 years repayment period. And one thing that we really liked is the 5-year opportunity for deferment, and that's after construction. So how does it work? What does it look like? The repayment period is deferred, allowing the communities to capitalize on early investment of their infrastructure. As shown in this example, the deferment assists in the latent effects of rate revenues, and the stormwater can be the catalyst to what we need here at the UG for redevelopment and revitalization efforts. So from here, we asked ourselves, could WIFIA be for us? Research into previously awarded recipients showed that the EPA had interest in a wide range of stormwater and water programs to include green infrastructure and stormwater very specific programs. This fact allowed the Public Works to take a closer look into the opportunity. So a group from the UG was able to visit the EPA to discuss potential with stormwater and green infrastructure specifically as a program approach. The EPA took interest in our 8-basin deficiency study, our socioeconomic areas of awareness to include Jersey Creek, and the scale of projects within the CMIP itself. The takeaway was, yes, WIFIA could be the catalyst for the significant momentum the community is wanting through stormwater infrastructure. So over the past few months, staff from across multiple departments have been looking at ways we can meet the criteria 51% match. The matching ranges from existing projects, shovel-ready projects, and project in developmental phases. Having those three, think of it like the 3 legs on the stool, is very important for the application. So an interesting point to additionally clarify is that while we are approaching WIFIA from a stormwater avenue, it isn't just stormwater projects that are eligible, potentially eligible for match. So take, for instance, a familiar project that we're all aware of is Leavenworth Road. It's within multiple watershed basins with stormwater infrastructure components. So the funds utilized on the stormwater construction are potentially eligible to be included in the calculations of a 51% match. Additionally, land bank, CSO projects, and green infrastructure for stormwater capacity projects are also included. These matching funds allows us to expand the stormwater reach in our community to focus on Jersey Creek and Armourdale specifically. Utilizing the momentum around other projects will also highlight the progress that the UG is realizing. So ultimately, by leveraging funds within roadway programs, wastewater rates, and stormwater rates, we have an opportunity to make our dollars reach their full potential to the community. This potential attracts revitalization and continued prosperity in our neighborhoods that may otherwise not have been fully supported for redevelopment. So hopefully hearing more about the WIFIA program has shed some newfound enthusiasm towards the EPA and stormwater. So what's next? That's our next question.
Right, and so staff's recommending the commission advance this and then adopt a letter of interest or approve a letter of interest on October 1 to be submitted to the EPA, and that would start the clock. Sarah Schaefer, I think it could be 6 to 9 months negotiating the details of the program with the EPA before we could start. Is that correct?
Correct. So our basic timeline is beginning of October, we're preparing to be fully ready to submit by the deadline of October 15th. Upon notification of award, then it is approximately 6 to 9 months to go through the negotiation process of projects, funding allocation, what amount we want, and then to set our closing for our interest rate. And once that closing occurs, that interest rate is held and funds can start becoming distributed. And then upon approximately, we can defer up to 5 years after construction is substantially complete prior to beginning our repayment program.
So if you think about that clock or that schedule, it could be up to 10 years before the UG has to start making payments. All the while, we're not paying interest, and the interest is really low. It's locked in. So it gives us a lot of time, gives us a lot of flexibility in whatever plan or rate structure the commission ends up adopting. So to that point, eventually we believe we need to re-engage on stormwater, rainwater, and there's a draft strategy that we've just submitted to the county administrator that, of course, the mayor and commission would be providing feedback on. So not ready to get into those details, but this initiative would need to be supported by some adoption of some rate structure in the future. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, so Jeff,
Go ahead.
what we're doing is we're passing this on. We're trying to figure out if we can get some monies for this, but we're still, as commissioners, we'll still be able to look at the overall situation and say, yes, no, or maybe.
Right. When we re-engage, you'll, of course, you'll determine how we want to re-engage the public and what plan we want to approve in the future regarding rainwater, stormwater rate structure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fisher, it's Commissioner Bynum. So I'm kind of reiterating what Commissioner Kane said, but a couple of key points. If I'm understanding the program, if we're successful in securing funding, then number one, it could put a nice sized dent in our stormwater funding needs, correct?
That's correct.
And even though we would lock in an interest rate at a current low rate, we may not make that payment for a minimum of 5 years, possibly up to 10.
That's correct.
On the slide, there's a couple slides back where Ms. Schaefer was giving some examples. One of them was CSO, and there you go. I wondered if we could spell that out for anybody that might be watching, what that means.
Sarah Schaefer, you want to hit on that?
Yeah, so that's our combined sewer network. So that's where we have storm and sanitary and combined pipelines.
So we could be looking at putting some of the funding into a project where we are mandated to uncombine, correct?
Well, not
And-
necessarily uncombined.
Go ahead.
You're on the right track. We definitely would use sanitary sewer objectives in the consent decree and leverage those with stormwater projects and leverage other needs in those areas like Jersey Creek and Armadale and Argentine, and package these needs together in a way that we're leveraging those revenue streams and stretching the dollars in every way possible, getting as much impact to the community as well.
Right. I think that's just really so critical to make sure that we're highlighting. Because if I understand the program, it offers us the opportunity to continue to do the work that absolutely must be done, but with the potential that what we would need to charge our own property owners could be lessened because we've been able to access this money.
It could have that effect, the lessening the rates.
I guess I'm thinking specifically of the stormwater issue.
Sure. Yeah, the lower interest rate, leveraging other projects, we can make those dollars go a lot farther. Unfortunately, it's time costs money, and so we really need to get back into that and get started on projects.
Mhm. Does this need to be fast tracked to our September 17 meeting or no?
No, October 1's fine.
Okay. And
I have another question.
yes, go ahead.
So this is Commissioner Philbrook. So Jeff, on this, you said that approval from the commission to start moving forward and negotiating terms and how much we need, that sort of thing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, but does that come back to us at all before you sign on before we sign on the dotted line as to what you negotiated to?
Sarah Shaver, can you speak to the mechanics of that?
What was the question?
Will this need to come back?
I'm sorry, it's kind of breaking up a little bit for me.
Will as we negotiate with EPA, will there be milestones that this comes back to the commission?
I am not sure on that, actually. I would say that I would be reporting back, but in terms of action items, I'm not sure that there's action items aside from the reporting back and then accepting, moving forward on a closing. So that would be our next, I think, motion, motion action would be that
Okay.
in this process.
Okay, so what I'm
Does that answer it?
I'm going to repeat back to you in my words what I heard, and then you can tell me. So basically, you're going to do all the negotiations. You're going to come, and then that contract you're going to pass before the commission to approve for the loan amount that we're going to go for. I'm hearing.
I believe that's
I
correct.
believe so. Yes.
Okay, I just making sure I understand all of these the part that I have to understand, and that is
Yeah.
to sign on the dotted line. Okay.
Tonight the recommendation from Jeff and myself is to provide a letter of support that is to be included into the WIFIA letter of interest or application. That is what we recommend the governing body to make a motion to move forward with.
Well, this is Commissioner.
And we do have.
Okay, and this is Commissioner Philbrook, and I believe we should move this forward to the full commission. That's a motion.
Thank you. Are there other
second?
And we have a second from Commissioner Markley, I believe. And other questions or comments from this committee before we vote? Anything from the public, Madam Clerk?
Nothing from the public.
Okay, excellent. How about roll call, please?
Roll call, Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
And that motion carries. And before we conclude tonight, being that that was our last item, I just want to say to staff, you've just done such a remarkable job just keeping the wheels on the bus, first of all, and second, just continuing to be out there in the midst of this pandemic, finding programs like this that we, potentially could be of major help to this community. And I just commend you. I hope that when it's time for rest, that you actually do that. Because I can't even imagine, the work conditions that you're toiling under. So just a very sincere thank you to each and every staff person. And that does conclude Public Works and Safety. We are adjourned as that committee, and I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Markley, and she will run Administration and Human Services. Thank you all. And thank you, Mr. Groneman, as usual, for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, friends. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID, some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of the meeting. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call, Philbrook,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Bynum,
Here.
Markley.
Here, thank you. A blue sheet was distributed last week, adding 2 items to our agenda. Item number 2 is a presentation regarding eviction data, and item number 3 is an update on the CARES Act funding. Both of these items are for information only. In fact, I believe all of our items tonight are for information only. We have no minutes to approve since the July 27th meeting was canceled. And item number 1 is the employee flu vaccine program update. And I think Alan Howes is presenting that item.
Hi, good evening, Commissioner. This is,
Shakiba's here as well.
I'm sorry, yes.
Take it away.
County Administrator, and this evening we'll have an update from our Human Resources and the Health Department team that's been working on updates to the flu policy for the UG, and wanted to bring this to you for information. It's an effort that has grown in part from the response to COVID and the related need to protect employees as we enter the flu season, not only just so that we can reduce absenteeism and all that associated with it, but also to protect employees and their families. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shakiba Christian, the Deputy Director of Human Resources.
Thank you. So yes, again, my name is Shakiba Christian, Human Resources Manager. Bonnie Blosser, our Benefits Administrator, is on the line as well to present, as well as Terry Garrison. We did want to discuss the flu vaccination policy, which would require all employees to receive a flu vaccination annually. In light of COVID-19, employee health and safety are paramount. Flu season is fast approaching, and as you can imagine, having the flu season occur during the pandemic can drastically impact employee safety and health. So as such, as Alan mentioned, we have developed a policy regarding the flu vaccination, as well as plans to have employees vaccinated prior to the start of the flu season. So we'll talk about why the flu is a big deal this year. We'll discuss the flu vaccination policy, our plans for implementing or administering the flu vaccine to all employees, and then the health department goals. As far as I guess, community health standpoint, Bonnie, if you can go back one more slide, I'm sorry. Thank you. Individuals with the flu are at a higher risk. There we go. Are at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19 and vice versa. Individual immune systems could be depleted from fighting the flu versus flu virus, which could reduce their ability to fight against COVID-19 and vice versa. It is hard to differentiate between the flu and COVID-19 because of the similarities in symptoms. So this poses challenges and delays with determining which tests to administer from the healthcare standpoint. This also increases costs in possibly having to run 2 tests, as well as the possibility of overloading the healthcare system in hospitals if they're treating both COVID and the flu patients. There is a possibility of the flu and COVID-19 causing shortages of PPE, as there are approximately 1,500 to 2,000 flu cases per year. So from the UG standpoint, flu could also considerably increase UG employee absences. As you guys are probably familiar, each time we enter into the building, we do have to screen for symptoms. And because of the similarity in symptoms, those that would be experiencing flu symptoms would, of course, have to leave the building due to the uncertainty as to whether it's flu or COVID. So vaccinating employees to kind of mitigate that and ensure that they're not receiving or not experiencing the flu symptoms could help decrease a high amount of employee absences. Okay, ready for next one, Bonnie. So as far as the new policy, as recommended by the CDC, all UG employees should obtain the flu vaccination by November of each year and sign the declination indicating whether they want to refuse the flu vaccination or not. We would not, of course, ask on the refusal, the reason for the refusal if they deny having to do so. But we do give that opportunity for the refusal if the employee chooses to do that. Employees would be required to familiarize themselves with the new policy, sign an acknowledgement of receipt of the policy, which is a one-time form unless there are updates to that policy. And then they would also sign annually a flu vaccination employee statement indicating that they have been vaccinated for the year. Supervisors would also be responsible for collecting the acknowledgement forms as well as the vaccination employee statement forms. They also have them submitted to Human Resources and ensure also that employees would have an opportunity to be dismissed from work to take their flu vaccines if necessary. Next one, thank you. As far as Human Resources responsibilities, we will maintain all the signed forms. The databases provide employees with reminders of the policy, track employee forms, and track employee compliance, I guess, with the policy. The health department chief epidemiologist will review annual employee influenza vaccination rates and develop and recommend strategies, including revisions to the policy to ensure and improve influenza vaccination rates. After employees are vaccinated, the UG families then would be invited to the Road to Wellness Health Center or the health department for a free flu shot. Okay. And the next, Bonnie, will talk about the plan for vaccinating for the 2020 flu season.
Thank you, Shakiva. This is Bonnie Blosser, Benefits Administrator in the Human Resources Department. And we're pretty excited about being able to make this vaccination process as easy as possible for employees. So we have put together 3 teams that will be going on site at various locations, various times of the day, and we'll make the vaccine available in the departments or at different locations. So those 3 teams include a team from the UG Health Department, one from the UG Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department, and then staff from our Road to Wellness Employee Health Center. We also will be working with the Buildings and Logistics team to set up a drive-through flu clinic for employees who are not able to get their vaccine at their location when we are scheduled to be there. We will begin the vaccine starting September 28th, and we would like to have everyone completed by November 1st, but we've given ourselves an extra week just in case we need to get a few more folks in there. And I'm going to turn it over to Terry.
Can you hear me? Okay. As part of the health department goals, we would like to see at least 90% or better of UG employees vaccinated. At this time,
We also would like to have 95% of our higher risk employees, the health department employees and our public safety employees vaccinated. So at least 90% of UG employees as a whole, but 95% within those higher risk categories. We'd like to vaccinate the entire UG employees household as much as possible, again, to help prevent the spread of the flu. Just like COVID, it can spread through a household. The flu can spread just as easily. We're going to use the 2020 flu vaccine campaign as kind of a trial run for when a COVID-19 vaccine does become available to us, that we can start getting our community vaccinated with that in the quickest and most expedient way to get everyone vaccinated with that when that is in fact available. We'd like to increase community-wide vaccination rates to about 65%. Currently, it's not flu is not a reportable disease. And so we also don't keep track of flu vaccines other than every 2 to 3 years, the state of Kansas does a survey, telephone survey. It's behavioral risk surveillance survey. And so from that, we know that individuals 18 years old to 65 years old, there's only about a 30% uptake of the flu vaccine. And then 65 years old and older, it's about a 65% uptake. So we would really like to see that improve within the county of across the board, at least 65% across the board of the Wyandotte County residents getting the flu vaccine. We want to, of course, prioritize our high-risk communities, which are our older individuals, as well as those with underlying symptoms, underlying medical conditions, much the same as with our COVID. So it's kind of the same population that we would really want to prioritize. And then while we're doing all of this, again, we're trying to create standards of practice, prioritization guidelines, and plans for when we would roll out an upcoming COVID vaccine campaign. So we're kind of using this in two ways. Number one, to protect our community as a whole against the influenza, but also to make plans for when a COVID vaccine does become available. We know we can hit the ground running, and we know what needs to be done in order to get that out to our community as quickly and as effectively as possible. Thank you.
Okay. I guess with that, we could open up for if there's questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm just going to restate a couple of things. I think this could come across as confusing to people because we're going through this whole COVID situation. So this is the regular flu vaccine, the one that's available every year that many of us have been getting for many, many years. So that's what we're talking about here. The discussion today is that the way we roll it out may be similar to what a COVID vaccine would look like when that is available. So just for anybody watching or looking at this later who's confused, I want to make it clear, this is just the regular flu vaccine. We don't have a COVID vaccine, but we'd like to. So that's happening. So this would be free to employees, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then free to their families after we've gotten through the employees, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then the last point I would just make, again, I'm just reiterating what you guys have said, is that we're not going to hold people down and force vaccinate them. They are going to have to fill out paperwork if they don't want to get a vaccine. So the idea here is to encourage the vaccine by making it more annoying to fill out the paperwork than to just go through the drive-thru and get it done, right?
Right. So yeah, our goal, of course, is to get as many people vaccinated as possible and to educate on the positive outcomes we can receive as a result of that. So, yes.
Well, this is Commissioner Philbrook, and I that I really appreciate you getting out there ahead of it and using this as a good model people on board for when we have a vaccine for COVID. And this is a good trial run. And when I say trial run, a good trial at a good trial run at trying to get people to participate. And I hate to admit it, I guess I'll have to participate this year since I opened my mouth.
That would be great.
Other questions from the commission? Clerk, did we receive anything from the public?
We received no public comments.
All right, this item was for information only, so if there are no further comments, we will thank you all for your presentation and hope that you have great success in getting our employees to get the flu vaccine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have another presentation, and this is regarding eviction data, and Kathleen is here to speak with us on that topic.
Good evening, thank you. I thought it would be interesting to all of you to see a little bit of information on evictions historically in our community, and as the pandemic has impacted housing for many of our residents, we felt that it would be important for you to know what in the past has occurred with eviction levels so that we can now, in going forward, kind of measure how the COVID pandemic has impacted evictions of our residents who are renters. So I'm introducing here for the presentation my research manager, Mike Grimm, who is going to be elevated as a presenter here, hopefully. And then he can, if he can share his screen and show the PowerPoint that we provided as an information item tonight. Is Mike on?
I see a Mike G in the attendees, Rocky. I'm guessing that's him.
Well, I had promoted another one, so maybe that one was not the correct one. Just a second.
And I can share my screen instead if Mike has any trouble.
Mike is on. He should be on now.
Mike, are you able to talk with us?
Mike, are you on mute?
It shows him as unmuted, but I'm not hearing him.
Unless he's calling in from a number and also, but I wouldn't know what that number is.
So I'm gonna call up the PowerPoint now and share my screen just in case he's not able to do that.
Yeah, I would say, Mike, if you're on and you're listening, email Rocky and tell her what your phone number is and how to get you on here. And in lieu of that, Kathleen can pull up the show and maybe get us started.
As I said a couple minutes ago, I know there were two Mike Grimms, so I had promoted them both, but then now they're both gone. So I don't know if something happened, if he fell off or not.
Technical difficulties. We'll have Kathleen at least begin to lead us through, and if he hops on, he can take it from there.
All right. All right. So so we have collected this data from a firm that is called the Eviction Lab from Princeton, and so we have data for since 2000 to 2016, and that's the most recent data. Mike is planning to is working with Rob Anderson in Public Works. And together, along with data that we've been collecting from the district court, we plan at a future commission meeting to provide you with information on how evictions are performing from 2017 to present. So tonight's presentation doesn't talk about evictions and how they've been impacted by COVID necessarily. It's more of a baseline for you to see our eviction level in general in our community. So, so as you can see, since 2000, the eviction level has been rather stable, although it did tick up in terms of filings since 2008. I think that was probably due to the housing downturn during that time. But in terms of number of evictions, it hovers around the 1,400 level. Mike, are you on now? Oh, shoot, I thought I heard him.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. Mike, hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. There's one in every crowd, I guess. So everybody can hear me?
Why don't you take it from here?
Okay. I kind of missed your intro a little bit. I was struggling with what I had going on, but I'll assume you just started to talk about this line graph here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so this data is from the Eviction Lab. It's a program out of Princeton University, and it was started in the mid 2000s. The researcher was doing some work and saw some issues with eviction in the community they were working in, and thought this would be great data for all communities to have. So ultimately, this program got all the data for all the counties, and actually down to the tract and block group level. And so we have it for Wyandotte County, and as Kathleen mentioned, it's historical data, but it's a good baseline to get a handle of what happened in the past. And as you can see from the graph, the dark blue line on top are the eviction filings, right? So a case submitted to district court. And then what's interesting, however, are the actual evictions, which was the judgment made in favor of the plaintiff, and we see that's relatively flat. So whether those cases are dismissed or my guess is they're probably mediated somehow. I think that's pretty telling on the graph. So on the right, we see again about 1,400 to 1,500 evictions per year. So interestingly, the census data shows us that the rental units in the county have actually been increasing. But we do know from the period after the recession to really here until a few months ago recently, the economy has been doing really well. Median household income has been increasing. There's been jobs have been increasing, low unemployment. So, but again, of course, all this has changed relatively recently. So again, good baseline, and we'll see what's going on moving forward. I mean, it's probably a good time to point out, and maybe Kathleen mentioned that there's another staff member working on some district court data, more current data in relation to the CARES Act and potential funding, for organizations in the county to help individuals with evictions. So on that, more information to come in the future. So on the next slide, there we go. Here's the eviction data from the Eviction Lab for the past 17 years, 2016. So we can see, some warmer areas of the county in the colors. So the darker areas, the more red or the higher percentage of evictions in the county over that period. So we see, the northeast area of the county, and then extending down through the parallel to Leavenworth, State Avenue corridor, and then down following the Kansas River there, we see some darker reds. And I know, my guess is in the Edwardsville Census Tract 44702 and then the larger one just to the east, there's some mobile home builders in there. So that'd be my guess is those have perhaps higher eviction rates, and that's maybe what we're seeing there.
Mike, is that a percentage of, I think it said it there at the very bottom, maybe. So this is a percentage based on the number of renter. So it could just be that there aren't very many rentals in those red areas, but that all the rentals that are there are struggling.
You're exactly right. Yeah, Commissioner. So it's an average over that period of evictions and by renter-occupied households. So whenever we look at the data, or any data, you really have to be careful of kind of what your denominator is. Is it, a real small number? And I can say of the tracks that we see, I'd have to review it for sure, but I think, I think it's pretty telling. I don't think there's anything misleading on this map per se that would stand out, or I would have noted that. And of course, all the industrial areas or low population areas that you see in white, of course, we're just not going to show anything there. So on the next slide, this is what I'm titling the eviction score, and this is, so we're moving away from the eviction lab data, and this is something that I derived, and I hope people will look at it and review it and critique it, and we can maybe even make it better. But what I did, and I'll talk about the variables a little bit more on the next slide, but I did some research and to see what were some of the leading causes of eviction, and it is a complex social issue, but there were a handful that were kind of rising to the top. So in essence, I took those data items, and again, I'll point them out on the next screen, next slide. But so you can see, generally, it's probably a little more darker than the actual eviction lab data. I think it's got the warm colors in about the right spots, northeast, kind of going down the Midtown corridor. Maybe a little more red south of the river, Turner, or not Turner, but Shawnee Heights, Argentina a little bit. I'm not showing anything for Bonner or Edwardsville because I didn't have one variable, and that's the single family rental unit. So that would be something that we could work on getting. So the idea here is potentially, this could be used as a tool, and the staff person working on the current eviction data for the CARES Act, they thought this would be actually pretty useful for them. So hopefully it's a tool that we can use and help the community out in certain spots.
So this score, I just wanted to add, this is Kathleen, that this tool is sort of to try and predict where more evictions might happen in the future or in the past. So. Right.
Thanks, Kathleen. That's exactly what I was going to ask. Jane, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So more of a statement. It looked to me when I was reading over this that when you talk about evictions, these are only court-ordered evictions. Is that correct?
On the prior data, yes. Now this is the one we're looking at now is just kind of using census data and some UG data to try and predict where evictions would occur. But the prior eviction lab data, correct? That's all court ordered, upheld in court. A ruling was given in favor of the plaintiff. So that's what that is.
Well, the reason I'm making the differentiation between court order evictions and getting an eviction notice, by the person that's renting the property to you, there's some people that, get eviction notices and they go ahead and leave and you don't have to take them. So I imagine there's a whole lot more evictions out there than what we know about. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, that's a possibility for sure. So even before, that's a good point. So before, maybe they know, they just walk, or maybe even before those eviction, I'll say, papers are served, they're just, they're gone. Yeah, I would know. I don't think we can measure that, of course, but yeah, that's a real possibility, I would presume. So on the next slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit. I won't just go crazy talking about this, but these are the variables that I looked at to come up with the eviction score. And again, kind of based on some research that I did, and I think it'll make sense. Of course, median household income. Obviously, the lower the income, the harder it's going to be to pay rent, and that's the census data item. Another census data item is gross rent as a percent of household income. So how much of my income goes to pay my rent. Of course, the higher that is, the more of an issue that is financially for families and individuals. The third census item is household by type. The data shows us that if there's a household that has a single parent, male or female, and children under 18, that's going to be a contributing factor. And then some UG data, unified government data on single-family rentals, and then some appraisal data on multifamily units. So again, combining all of these, and in general, what I did was sort, like, on median household income, sort low to high. So the more negative the measure kind of rose to the top. I gave that a score of 5. The next group was 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I sorted each of those, sorted them and assigned a score for each one of those. Brought all those together, resorted by track. So you could have a track with a 5 in one category, a 4, and then a 3 for household type, for example. But anyway, when you sum those up, it gave you a score, a final score that we can map, and that you saw on the previous slide. So again, this is a start. I think I was a little pleased when I did this. I was afraid that it wouldn't look anything like the eviction data, the actual data, but it does, and I think it's, again, a good start, and we can hopefully use this moving forward. It's just a summary of the eviction moratoriums, COVID-19 related, and under the CARES Act, there were a couple sections. I'll say the first one under that section 4022 was probably really the only individuals covered were those borrowers that had a federally backed mortgage, so a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. That was a 60-day moratorium that expired in May. Kind of overlaid with that and went a little longer was the second one under that section 4024. It loosened up the restrictions a little bit, and then they talked about who was covered, and it was covered properties. So any property that had a tenant covered under the Violence Against Women Act, Rural Housing Voucher Program, or federally backed multifamily mortgage loans. So, but again, that one ended July 24th, and here just recently, about a week and a half ago, there's a CDC order that is providing an eviction moratorium. Now, this time it's covered persons. It seems to get away from the property a little bit more, and it's covered persons, any tenant, lessee, resident, or residential property that meets the criteria of the order. So you have to meet certain, hardship, financial hardship guidelines. For example, and if you are displaced, the idea is you'd be contributing to the pandemic, so that's the moratorium. Interestingly, on this one, though, there's no rent forgiveness, so it's a little hard to understand, I guess, but if you or, or family is out of a job for any amount of time, can't pay your rent, you may not get evicted for 2, 3, 4 months, whatever, but you have to pay all that back rent, so... and then this one expires at the end of the year. Tomorrow, the Kansas has an eviction moratorium that ends, and just some similar language with the above that, not to contribute to COVID-19 pandemic, if there's any financial hardships related to that, you could, have your eviction stayed for, well, till tomorrow, I guess. On the next slide, just a real quick slide on some causes of eviction, non-payment of rent, and really that's what we're talking about in this whole presentation, and really is the leading cause of evictions. And as with the moratoriums that I just talked about, you can still get evicted, and for these other reasons, continued late payments, damage to property, disrupting other tenants, or a holdover just not moving out when your lease ends. Okay, impacts of eviction, how it impacts our residents and community is homelessness, of course, for individuals or families. Having a court-ordered eviction can hurt your credit, and that could probably make it more difficult to get quality housing, including actually some public housing, if that were to apply to people. And as mentioned, the eviction comes with a court order. It could affect looking for additional work or finding a job, and of course, mental health issues. The person that really got the eviction lab going had a phrase, a quote, that's on the slide. Evidence strongly indicates that eviction is not just a condition of poverty, it's the cause of it. Then lastly, on the last slide, just a few resources that are out there today for residents. Kansas Legal Services, this would be more, my understanding is less financial support and more so finding a lawyer or to help, navigate documents, for example, or what are my rights, what can I do? And then the Kansas Resource Housing Corporation, and their mission is fairly simple. It's safe and affordable housing, kind of paraphrasing there, but really it's kind of a broad mission. But they will serve tenants and provide income eligible households with rent assistance or security deposits. And then lastly, HUD has it's more educational, but they have a toolkit out there that will help really landlords interact with high-risk tenants and to kind of make sure they're doing everything right within the fair housing laws, and getting rents repaid and things like that. So that's all I have on the presentation this evening. If there are any questions.
Questions from the committee? Again, really the point of hearing this information is for us to get a feel or a baseline in anticipation of, potential increase in evictions going forward as a result of COVID-19. Questions? Clerk, did we receive any comments from the public?
No comments were received.
All right, if there are no further questions, we will thank Mike and Kathleen for their presentation tonight. And that is for information only also. We'll move along to our CARES Act funding. Thanks, guys. CARES Act funding update. I think I just saw Crystal pop on to make presentation on that item. Crystal, your show is unmuted, but I couldn't hear you. This is the night of technical difficulties for us. Still no
Crystal,
sound.
can you hear us? Talk. Nope.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready.
Hey, we got it. All right, let me share my screen. Thank you very much. It must be the night for this. All right. Commissioner Markley, can you see my presentation?
I can.
Fantastic. Good evening. I'm pleased to provide you installment 2 of our CARES Act funding progress report. Very, very excited. We want to share some substantial information with you this evening. Make sure I can progress my slides here. We actually have some information to provide to you back from our report, and look forward to being able to provide that information to you today. But before I get started, I just want to remind everyone who is tuning in, for our listening audience, that we will provide you an overview of the Treasury Act, U.S. CARES Treasury Act, as well as the State of Kansas Spark Committee and the Wyandotte County Planning Committee here on the screen. But as always, you can find information about our history, and it's interesting to say history when it's been 100 days, but our history and complete story behind the WICO work to secure and distribute $37 million in CARES Act. So you can find that by just simply Googling CARES Act Unified Government. It will take you to a webpage that will give you lots of information about how we got to this point today. So I'm thrilled to report that we received notice from the State of Kansas recovery team on 9/7 late in the evening that we could proceed with distribution. So this was the best news that we had had for a while. I put a quote here from the report, which was also substantial in nature, but the number one takeaway that we received was that our report was comprehensive and robust. So we thought that was some pretty good feedback from the state. They also wanted us to consider these 6 following areas. The first being that we had the administrative structure to support this work within the UG departments. And we do believe that we have set up a good CARES Act team, and we did significant planning in the time between the grant application being released by the Spark Subcommittee Planning Committee and today's date to prepare to administer those CARES Act dollars internally within the UG or within the county. The second area for consideration draws attention to the fact that in our distribution plan, we expect $6 million to be expended in the month of December. That, of course, was concerning, I believe, to the recovery office, but I want to bring up 3 points. First of which, 25% of the community dollars are expected to be distributed in November or December, and that is based on the distribution rate that we established in the MOU, allowing for 50% to be distributed to our community partners upfront at the time that the MOU is signed, and then 2 installments of 25% once milestones have been reached, with the exception being smaller entities that ask for smaller amounts of money that could be easily distributed so that they could make 1-time or 2-time purchases. So we do expect of the $9 million of community investment that 25% of that will be expended in November or December. We also know that we have larger UG projects that will come to fruition in November and December. So we anticipated a large outlay or the completion of some projects in those months. And I also want to bring up that we do have the ability to adjust this as we progress. So if we end up having community partners that meet their goals, their milestones prior to November or December, that does not prohibit us from allocating those dollars and distributing those dollars, and we can adjust with the recovery office as we proceed. The third item that the recovery office asked us to consider, of course, was again about administration and whether or not we had the level of administration that we needed for 60 subrecipients. And again, I draw to that comprehensive and robust statement. We do believe that this is exactly why we set up the CARES team, was to come up with the best way possible to distribute, monitor, and assess the community agencies that we've set up. So we're fairly confident we'll be able to meet that consideration as we proceed further. The fourth is a request or a suggestion to develop a template for monitoring. We feel like we're ahead of the game in this consideration as we have been developing our reporting template, as well as how to make that as usable and easy to access for our community partners. The fifth, and I was pleased to see this item on the list because we could check it off automatically, The recovery office advises that we develop a application process and a review committee, as well as advertise our CARES Act dollars to community agencies. And we had that completed some time ago, so we were pleased to see that and able to mark that off the list. And the last item for areas of consideration was that we monitor all of our expenditures internally and externally for eligibility requirements as the federal guidance continues to change, with new federal guidance issued as late as the 2nd of this month. So we did get the approval to proceed, but the state of Kansas recovery feedback also suggested we look at 3 areas and made suggestions that we might want to consider or take these actions, these affirmative actions in these 3 areas. The first being to change 35 of our direct aid recipients to transfer direct agencies. We have considered this over the last 5 or 6 days, and we've determined that initially this did not seem to be clear regarding the action to these changes in the reporting and monitoring requirements of the subrecipients. So we're not really clear what this benefits us. We also believe that we established the CARES team to do exactly this, which was to monitor and ensure that all the monies that came to our county to respond and recover to the COVID-19 crisis were used for that manner, and that we were able to provide good accountability back to this organization, as well as to the commission and to the subcommittee, that our subrecipients were having an impact. So at this point, barring any other considerations, we do not believe that we are in a position to change those 35 agencies to direct transfer, and we're not really clear how that would benefit us. So I'll use this moment to interject that we do have an assigned individual that will be given to us from the CARES team at the state level or the recovery office to help us focus on any technical questions that we might have in distribution of the CARES Act dollars. We actually have our first introduction meeting tomorrow, and we will be exploring this further with that person when we are introduced tomorrow and sorting out whether or not this is a good action. But at this time, we believe that our best choice is to leave those programs as direct aid programs. The next item is to ensure that we have administrative capacity, which I spoke about on the previous slide, and to make sure in item 3 that we are spending down at a rate that is applicable to the distribution of those full dollars by the end of the year. The 4th item here is a review of only 3 of the county expenses that were submitted in our direct aid plan. We did not have any external community agency that was identified for review for expense justification, but we did have 3 county programs. The actions that we have taken so far is to give those 3 county expenses directly to legal to have them review our justification. In the reporting of the direct aid plan and the reimbursement plan for the UG, we did not have a whole lot of room for justification or advisement to the recovery office as to why these items were specifically COVID response and relief. But we are fairly confident that we have that justification already, and the legal department is putting together for us a response to the recovery office so that we can be assured that those 3 county expenses do in fact meet the requirements under the federal guidelines. We've also presented those 3 responses back to the specific departments and engaged them in discussion just to see if they have any additional justification that they could provide to us. We're discussing exact concerns with the recovery office, as I mentioned, tomorrow. And if changes need to be made to those programs, we'll bring that back to you so that as the standing committee can review those prior to submission to the recovery office. We have been asked for some clarification on our initial reporting. We believe that we'll be able to provide that tomorrow during our first meeting with the recovery office. Let me stop right there and see if any of the subcommittee members, standing committee members have any questions. That was a lot of information.
It's Melissa Bynum. Angela, my question is, if you had to bring something back to this committee, that would be next month. Would that not further delay an outlay to one of the agencies? I think I'm a little confused on that piece.
So we can, and we've been given the approval to distribute our funds as long as we have considered these items here that I have present, Commissioner. So the three expenses that the Recovery Office requested that we review for justification were internal expenses, and we're not touching the community agencies at all. The community agencies plan in total was approved for to proceed without any additional considerations.
Okay, thank you.
Did that help?
And those three items you use were expenses. So if they were expenses, they're not a going forward project necessarily anyway that we would be delaying the start of.
They are actually three separate expenses for direct aid plan. One is a pretty substantial investment in technology for the finance department. The second is some additional planning ahead for the health department, and the health department is reviewing that for need right now. And the third is actually the flu vaccination program, which we are certain we have the justification and actually some documentation from the governor's office that counties should be looking at the flu vaccination as part of their response and recovery to COVID. So those are the three planned expenses moving forward. All of our reimbursement requests were approved.
Perfect. And I think bottom line, Commissioner Bynum, that's a good point. I think if Crystal needed to move something forward more quickly and felt that it was imperative that that happen, we would just call a special meeting and handle it that way so that we could get that moving along. But it sounds like we're not going to need that, I don't think, for providing justifications for those items. Anyone else? All right, Crystal, forge ahead.
Yeah, forging ahead. Wanted to provide you a quick summary of the definitions here. I know we're talking about direct aid plans and transfers and city-county reimbursements for direct aid. This is language that we are becoming familiar with the application and disbursement of the CARES Act dollars, but we wanted to make sure that you guys could see some definition around what those terminologies are. Our aid plans are the 501c3s, medical response and educational, unless they were listed as a direct transfer and they were a public school entity or a higher learning education entity. Those direct aid plans will be governed by an MOU. The transfers are going to your public school districts, educational institutions such as our junior college, and those also are signing an MOU. The city of Edwardsville, the city of Bonner are signing and passing through their governing bodies resolutions. And then of course, the commission here passed a resolution adopting the UG departments and the health department plan. So we just wanted to provide you a little clarity and definition around those items. So the last time we met, we talked about what we think is probably the most impactful piece. Not that the county investment is not impactful, but the dollars that are going into the community to respond and recover, boots on the ground, are the pieces that we want to really focus on today, so that as commissioners and as the audience, there's a better understanding of what kind of process these subrecipients or these 501c3s, medical organizations, educational institutions have gone through. This is a review of the slide we provided you some weeks back with the adjustments listing here in the bottom left-hand corner that the Recovery Office did provide us approval. No adjustments were needed at the subrecipient level, which was great news. And at the time we talked to you last month, we said if approved and if the information is submitted that we need from the subrecipients, then the goal is to release the funds. We've updated that particular piece of the flow to say if the information is received from the subrecipients, then the goal is to release those allocated funds within 10 days. So I am glad to report that we were provided notification to the subrecipients on Friday. We have almost a 45% compliance rate already with the documents coming back to us. And so we're thrilled that we can move along with that process. And then I wanted to tell you a little bit about the process that's helped us speed the information train between the subrecipients and the UG so that we can get those dollars out the door as fast as we can. So normally when we are going to contract, we're going to sign an MOU, we're going to hand money or give money out through a grant award. There's three things that we would need from those particular entities. We need to register them as a vendor through our finance departments so that we can actually provide money to the agency in an ACH or a check form. In this particular case, we want them to review and sign an MOU. And we have some specific questions that are to the CARES Act funding allocation that we want to get from those entities. So what we've decided to do is to make this as streamlined as possible. You know, we had a couple of down weeks in between report submission and the information coming back from the recovery office. So we tried to streamline this as much as possible. So I will tell you, through the coordination of the budget office, the accounting office, the procurement office, and the CARES team, we've been able to convert this process that would have normally been a couple of packets of paper, all electronic for our subrecipients to respond to. Each community partner, like I said, received an email on Friday. It was aligned in view, similar to the application process that they went through, and it had three basic elements. The first was the email, the body of the email you see here to the left, that provided links to important documentations as well as some direction. They were provided an official award letter because we did not want to cut that out of the normal process for grant awards or recipients. We wanted to make sure that they had that formal award letter, but they also got a registration packet. That registration packet you see here on your left side of your screen, just a snippet. It was an electronic format or a digitally formatted document in which the subrecipients could fill out. I think the average is taking them about 1 minute and 40 seconds to fill it out. It gathers some information about expenses, but it also allows us to do that very critical thing, which is to upload a W-9 and assign a vendor number to the subrecipient. And that's all done now in, like I said, an average of about 1 minute 40. So this allows us to provide some additional direction to the subrecipient, get information out to them about potential collaboration across themselves. So whether or not those organizations collaborate with each other on tracking receipt of funds or application for housing assistance or application for utility assistance, and then allows them to upload documents to us in a matter of minutes rather than gather information off of a piece of paper. And then the last of those three items that we needed was an MOU. And the MOU normally is a legally binding document that is hand delivered or PDF delivered through email. It's signed and then sent back. We were able to digitize that information. It's still the same legally binding document, but now it allows the individual or the agency to run through the elements, sign them as we go. It allows us to timestamp the submission and keep us from emailing documents back and forth. It's easily modified to add or subtract applicable acknowledgements like you see here on the right side of your screen. And by far, I'm not giving you the whole document, just some portions of the document. So in this case, we were able to make it specific to the Coronavirus Relief Fund. It allows us to do some bulk processing on the back end, formatted in a way that prevents or should prevent, in most cases, duplication of entry or actually having to physically enter information. It gave us an opportunity to explore our own workflow, as well as to provide bulk review of contracting and bulk signing of contracting. We can retain this document without having to scan it, and we can easily provide it back to the subrecipient. So very pleased with the cross collaboration between the departments and the willingness of the departments to streamline this process so that we could get it turned around very quickly for the subrecipients. So again, those offices have been willing to support and walk through a change process that has what I believe will really speed up our ability to get those dollars out to the subrecipients. So that process is going now, and like I said, 10 days is our goal from the time the process is completed by the subrecipient to be able to either ACH or send the funds out to the organization or to cut them a check, depending on what element they have picked. We promised you we'll bring back strategic target areas. Every time we come back to see you, this will continue to expand as we continue to set goals for ourselves and work through those goals over the next 107 days. But just some basic information. We want to make sure we're drawing to your attention under accountability and lessen the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Wyandotte County in a measurable way. You heard Mr. Grimm talk about tracking eviction data. That definitely will be one of our indicators or one of our benchmarks in a concentration area for impact. And then another one I'd like to draw to your attention is the strategic target of providing transparent public information. We are launching a subrecipient webinar so that anybody who has some questions, or any of our subrecipients who have questions about the registration process or the actual distribution of the funds, including what milestones might look like, can get online and interact with their assigned CARES team. So additional information about round 2 funding. The Department of Commerce was, to our knowledge, the only department that did allow for open grant applications for round 2 funding. It is not clear at this time what round 3 funding will look like, but we continue to learn more as we set in on the SPARK committee meetings. It does not appear to us at this time that round 3 funding will be open for application. But we did want to let the subcommittee know and members of the standing committee know that there was a joint application placed between the city of Bonner Springs, the city of Edwardsville, and the unified government, with the goal to continue our county fiber network to Bonner Springs and Edwardsville, 2 of our most underserved and underconnected parts of the county. And that was placed under the Connectivity Emergency Response Grant request. We were able to put that request in. We've had some plans already in the works for possibilities to expand fiber into those areas. So this was a really great and quick application process amongst these 3 cities and county. There were 2 applications within the Department of Commerce that specifically spoke to small business. The first being the Small Business Working Capital Grant. This was open also to 501c3s, as well as the PPE procurement grant, which was for small businesses and the response to COVID with the purchase of PPE. We did a couple of things. One was to notify through our small business specialist on the CARES team, reach out to small businesses that might have applied for CARES Act dollars through round 1 funding, as well as to all the community contacts that the small business specialist had. And we have been noticed that up to, or a little over 40 Wyandotte County businesses did apply in one of these 2 areas. We don't know yet what the results of those applications were, but at least we had 40 plus that applied. In addition to this, I'd like to mention that in the UG's direct aid plan, we did have approved $825,000 for small business grants through the Economic Development Direct Aid Project. We're finalizing the application process this week, and as soon as those applications are released, we will make sure to provide community notice. We'll do some press release and information, as well as let this group and the other commissioners know that the application's been released so that we can get a good, healthy response to that application process. The subcommittee or the planning committee will remember, the 3 members that are here on the standing committee tonight will remember that we did have a small pool of applications that were for small business specifically that have now been placed in that group that will be able to have access to that $825,000 in small business loans. So those are still there. I want to assure you that they've not been lost. They were already scored as applications, and the economic development team is working through those applications now. And last screen, it's always about the timeline for us here at the CARES Act team. A few interesting points. We've had 104 days since the governor announced the SPARK committee's formation. I know it seems like it's been forever ago, but it's only been 104 days. We've had 87 days since the Wyandotte County application for funding was released, and only 57 days since the application was due. 35 days ago, the commission approved the Wyandotte County CARES Act funding plan resolutions. It's only been 35 days, and we only have 107 days left to get all that spending done. So that just provides a little incentive for us in a countdown clock so that we can get this money out into the community and in the places that it's needed. So with that, I'll open for any questions, and that's all we have for today. The next time we meet, we're going to focus on internal UG county government projects and what the status of those projects are.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions from the committee?
This is Commissioner Philbrook. I just have a statement to make. Crystal, I don't know how you guys are getting all this done. It's just, yeah. And you're getting just as much response out in the community that are responding and filling out the information you need coming.
Absolutely, Commissioner. It's been pretty amazing. I will tell you that the internal departments here at the Unified Government have been miraculous in their ability to really sit down together and work through the process that normally would take maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And we've been able to really identify what works for each department, and all with the end goal that we need to get to a distribution point. And I was blessed with a really fantastic CARES team who just do amazing things. So, you know, that the clock that's there on the screen is definitely a motivator, but I think the biggest motivator, not only for the CARES team, but also the internal UG departments and other entities that have been working on this, is just let's get the money out in the community so that it is where it needs to be, so that we can be prepared for the fall, but also respond to the human suffering and hardships that are already occurring.
Yes. Thank you again so much, and team.
Any other questions? And Clerk, did we receive any comments from the public?
No, Madam Mayor. No, Madam Chairman.
I just got promoted.
That's right.
All right, if there are no other questions, this item also was for information only. We had a very informational meeting tonight. Thank you to all of our presenters and to Crystal for her update. And this concludes our meeting for the evening. Thanks for your attendance, and we are adjourned.